Hello, I'm Miranda.
And I'm Lucas.
And welcome to another special Halloween edition of That JORVIK Viking Thing podcast. Once again, we'll be reading another spooky story filled with trepidation, ghosts, and ghouls. Each story will be recorded live and read from the spooky tome. This is episode 2, and if you missed the first one, use the link in the description to go back and catch up.
As the world took its first steps into modernity and the old religion was swept away from England, a new age of reason and enlightenment began, or at least that's what they would have you believe. This time of science and philosophy was also a time of the occult, of sorcery and witches, whose familiars and demons of hell seem to have plagued the godly Protestant folk of this land, causing inexplicable phenomena to occur. What follows now is a true story of haunting, malefic magic and witchcraft. And so without further pause, here is tonight's tale, The Invisible Drummer. This tale concerns a haunting which occurred at the house of a certain gentleman by the name of Mr. John Mompesson, who lived in the town of Tedworth. He was one day conducting business in a neighbouring town where he encountered an alarmingly loud and repetitive nuisance of a noise which caused a most unwelcome distraction from his affairs. So he inquired with the town bailiff as to the source and cause of this annoyance. It transpired that the town had been troubled for several days by an idle drummer who rudely beat upon his instrument whilst falsely declaring that he was owed a sum of money by the town constable. Mr. Mompesson summoned the idle drummer before him and inquired as to whose authority the drummer went about with his instruments, producing such a racket, to which the drummer presented papers with a warrant that he claimed were written in the hands of respectable local men of the gentry and officers. However, Mr. Mompesson instantly realised that these papers were counterfeit, so he immediately charged the constable to carry away this vagrant drummer before a justice of the peace for punishments, and he ordered that the drum be confiscated. The drummer begged leave to keep possession of his drum, but it was decided that the drum would remain temporarily confiscated. The drummer grew most angry and bitter at this answer, angrily shouting foul words of abuse at the gathered gentlemen, informing them that they shall rue the day that they parted him from his beloved instruments. He was swiftly dragged away by the bailiff, whilst Mr. Mompesson resumed conducting his business before returning to his house with the confiscated drum in hand.
It's not very spooky yet.
Wait and see. Soon after this, he departed for a brief visit to the capital, leaving the aforementioned drum secure within his household. And when he returned, he found the household in a state of great distress. For at night, when the family and servants had retired to their chambers, great crashing noises had been heard downstairs, and the rooms were broken up in great disarray. 3 nights later, Mr. Mompesson heard the same noises return, a great repetitive knocking noise upon the doors and on the outside of the house. He loaded his pistols and went downstairs, aiming his weapons towards the door where the knocking was most violent, ready to shoot the wretched criminal. But when he opened the door, there was no one there, and the noise instantly transferred to another door upon the other side of the house, where once again, nothing was to be found. The noise of thumping and drumming continued for a long time, striking upon the roof of the house, until eventually it stopped. The drumming on the house's exterior continued each night for a month, but then the noises began to instead emanate from the interior, specifically the chamber where the confiscated drum lay, beating away for hours. Mr. Mompesson would on occasion lie within this room in order to observe the phenomena, but could find no cause or explanation for the noises.
Weird.
Getting spookier, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The drumming was more a nuisance and a hindrance of sleep than anything else. But 3 weeks later, events took a more violent and unsettling turn. Whatever entity caused this noise began to take an interest in the children of the household, haunting their rooms by beating upon their bedsteads with such violence that it was feared the beds would collapse and injure the children. Then, a disturbing scratching noise would emanate from beneath their beds, as if iron talons scraped upon the wood. And after this, the children would rise up out of their beds, carried by unseen hands. And on one autumn night, a servant observed 2 wooden boards being torn with invisible force from a piece of furniture within a child's room, which caused him to utter, "Pray, let me have it in my hand," which resulted in the boards suddenly moving towards him with great force, striking him repeatedly, alarming many witnesses. That night's haunting immediately ceased after this, though upon the spirit's departure, the room was engulfed in a foul, sulphurous aroma which was considered to be most offensive. Ghost fart.
I was going to say that.
So I'm about to do it again. That night's haunting immediately ceased after this, though upon the spirit's departure, the room was engulfed in a foul... Stop it.
Okay, sorry.
We're going to laugh at farts and the concluding statements at the end, okay? That night's haunting immediately ceased after this, though upon the spirit's departure, the room was engulfed in a foul, sulphurous aroma which was considered to be most offensive. Later, some neighbours came to visit, led by a local minister, who asked that the gathering kneel together in prayer in the room where the hauntings were most troublesome. And it seemed as if the good minister had succeeded in banishing the entity, for the incessant thumping and drumming departed the room in response to the holy words, retreating into the loft where its muffled, distant noises could just be heard. Most unfortunately, however, the minute the prayers concluded, the door opened, and the spirit clearly returned to its mischief as the chairs began to walk around the room by themselves, followed by all other pieces of loose furniture. The children's shoes were hurled across the room, through the air by invisible hands, and a bedstaff was propelled through the chamber at the minister, which struck him upon the leg, though thankfully he was unharmed.
These hauntings had been going on for a month, and then the minister showed up?
Communication was slow in this period, I think. It was immediately decided that the children should be sent away to lodge with a trusted neighbour, as the hauntings had taken on such an alarmingly violent turn for the worst. In the children's absence, the less aggressive nighttime drumming and knocking resumed, but eventually the children had to return to their home, and upon their arrival, the spirits began to delight in all sorts of cruel and petty tricks. It would slam doors upon people, causing sore bruises. It would tug at hair and clothing, and would hide possessions, displaying a particular dislike for Bibles. Servants found themselves lifted up from their beds, or alternatively, pinned down against the mattress, as if some great weight lay upon them. Though one serving man, by the name of John, discovered that the spirit would depart his chamber whenever the man reached for his sword in the night, as if the entity were afraid of the blade, though it would on occasion attempt to wrestle his sword away from him. When winter arrived, a strange, musical voice was heard within the chimney, and extraordinary lights were seen within the house, which were bright blue and glimmering, and caused great discomfort if observed directly. Footsteps were heard treading softly up and down the stairs in the night, whilst doors slammed open and shut incessantly. During a gathering of neighbours at the house, one gentleman in the company commanded the spirits, "Devil, if the drummer set thee to work, give 3 knocks and no word. Then give 5 knocks and no more this night." And the spirit complied, beating 3 times, then 5 times, and remaining quiet throughout the remainder of the night. And this was observed by many witnesses.
At this point, I think I probably would have just given the drum back to the guy that they got it from.
I've got nothing to say to that. Yep.
It's a good point, right?
A few days after this, shortly before dawn, Mr. Mompesson heard a great noise beneath the room where the children lay. So he ran down with a loaded pistol in hand and heard a loud voice shout out, "A witch! A witch!" But the room was silent and empty when he arrived. The next night, the spirits began panting like a large dog and caused rooms that it entered to become excessively hot despite the cold winter weather. And the rooms became filled with a noxious sulphurous aroma. Okay. That could be a sound effects for it.
There we go.
Ghost farts. Okay. And the rooms became filled with noxious, sulphurous aromas.
Sorry.
Let's repeat it, do I? Was that all right? Okay. It was decided that ashes should be scattered upon the floor to observe the size and the shape of the spirit's feet. And come morning, there were numerous prints, which resembled those of a great clawed beast, whilst many letters were also scratched into the ashes, though in a script and language that no Englishman could decipher. Mr. Mompesson then observed logs of wood begin to move and rise within the fireplace of their own will, so he promptly loaded a pistol and discharged a shot at said logs, which disturbingly sprayed scattered droplets of blood upon shattering. But this calmed the hauntings for a period of time, though this also evidently angered the spirits. It entered a servant's room soon after this and appeared as an apparition for the first time. It was too dark to make out its shape or form, but it was exceedingly large and in possession of two red, glaring eyes which fixed upon the man in anger before vanishing. Mr. Mompesson regularly encountered apparitions of 7 or 8 dark figures entering his chambers at night, though he quickly observed that a single shot from his pistol was enough to frighten away the spectres. The children then began levitating in their beds with such forcefulness that the strength of 6 men was unable to lower them back. Chamber pots were emptied upon sleeping folk by the spirits. Chamber pots emptied on people. It just turns into like a Disney cartoon. Ghost!
It's a bit like Casper, isn't it?
Chamber pots were emptied upon sleeping folk by the spirits, and dangerous, sharp objects like iron pikes and kitchen knives were hidden within bedding, clearly intending to maim the household.
Can't help but think that his whole house must have been full of little holes because he just kept shooting at stuff, you know?
Word of the haunting spread throughout England, though many folk were sceptical and believed some trickery or tomfoolery were at work in Mr. Mompesson's house, which led a gentleman by the name of Mr. Glanville and his associate Mr. Hill to arrive at the house and investigate the true nature of these occurrences. The gentleman observed a strange scratching noise from behind the children's beds, as loud a scratching as long nails could possibly make, but behind the beds, nothing was to be seen. While searching the room for any sign of trickery, an invisible, loud, panting noise emanated from beneath the beds, so loud that the room and its windows shook violently, though no creature could be seen lurking beneath the beds. While sleeping in the house that night, Mr. Glanville encountered a knock at his door, to which he asked, "In the name of God, who is it, and what would you have?" To which a deep, rasping voice answered, "Nothing with you." Mr. Glanville and his associate were persuaded, based upon what they had observed, that there truly was a spirit, or worse, a demon from hell, at work in that house. But people were now asking, where on earth had this entity come from, and whether it was sent by some evil person. So a man was dispatched to find the vagrant drummer, who had ended up jailed in the city of Gloucester for thievery. And it was reported that the drummer inquired whether there was any news from the town of Tedworth. When the visitor had none to deliver, the drummer angrily blurted out, "No news? Do you not hear of the gentleman's house that was troubled with the beating of drums? I have plagued him, because he took my drum from me, and he shall not have his quiet again until I have my drum or satisfaction from him." This surprising outburst was viewed by many as a confession of witchcraft. So the drummer was then put on trial, for it was illegal to find, feed, employ, or reward any evil spirits. The court was presented with eyewitness accounts by respectable gentlemen of these hauntings, as well as reports that in his youth, the drummer did associate with a known warlock who had bequeathed arcane and unsavoury books unto him. The court was merciful, however, and the drummer was sentenced to transportation rather than death, packed onto a ship bound for the New World. And with this, the drummings and the hauntings ceased, as if the spirit or demon was sent abroad too. There were, however, rumours that the ship sank before it reached the colonies, struck by an unnatural storm conjured by magic, and that some of the criminals had escaped and even made it back to England. But this, of course, is just idle gossip, though it was also said that a faint drumming noise soon resumed in a certain gentleman's house. A tapping, a thumping, a drumming sound which sleepers found most disturbing. But this tale has disturbed us far enough for tonight, so let us end this bizarre and haunting account.
So I've got a couple of questions about this, right? I mean, there are like 12 points at this story that I would have just moved out of my house or gotten rid of the drum or whatever, you know? None of that seemed to occur to anybody. That's fine. Why send them to America? That seems mean to my people, you know? I do take issue with that.
It was a different time.
It was a different time. And then I think my favorite part, right, was they were like, okay, for the sake of the children, like it's gotten to be too much. And they send them away and they're like, oh, the children actually have to come back? Why? Why did they have to come back?
They missed their mummy, I guess.
I mean, like they were being like thrown around the room and stuff. Like, is it really for their best interest?
Maybe they enjoyed it.
Possibly.
The kids were flying.
True. It does sound like a good time.
Yeah, I'd be more about daddy shooting pistols throughout the night, to be honest.
That is a good point. So you did say something a little bit weird at the beginning of this one, though. You said it was true.
It's true.
It's not true.
It's definitely... Paranormal investigators went to this house, as if you were listening to the story, you know.
Fair enough. Is there like actual evidence out there?
It's a very well recorded account of a haunting that occurred in England, yeah.
Very spooky.
Possible haunting that occurred in England.
Fair. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think, though, my most burning question is why did the ghost keep farting?
We do not use such foul language on that JORVIK Viking thing podcast, Miranda.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Dignify that with a response.
No, that makes sense.
The farting ghost, how dare you.
I mean, I guess like at the end, once you knew it was a prisoner, right? Like it made sense that he was like extracting his vengeance and stuff. But like that was just like a step too far, you know? Like sure, grab the knife, try to stab someone, but don't fart in someone's house. That's just a little bit too much, you know? As scary as that was, I think I've got a scarier story. That concludes this week's spooky story, and we've been your hosts, Miranda
and Lucas,
from that JORVIK Viking Thing podcast, linked in the description below. If you want to learn more about the Georgians in York, visit the Barley Hall coffee shop and check out our interactive displays.
Make sure to tune in next time for episode 3 and for more tales of the unknown. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below as to whether you think that was a true story or not. And make sure to tune in next Friday for episode 3 and for some more stories from the spooky tome. Until then, sleep well, sleep well, sleep well. glowing discomfort. I got tongue-tied.